The meeting will be in order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing, as there has been a number of people who are no longer with us since the last annual meeting, and a tradition I've begun in Vernon to have a moment of silence to both reflect on those that are no longer with us and to reflect on having civil discourse tonight. So please, a moment of silence. Thank you. Please be seated. I'd like to introduce David Dunn, the chair of the Brattleboro Union High School Board, to introduce members of the board to all of you tonight. Mr. Dunn.
Thank you. Why don't we start from
mic switch, David? Mic switch? There's a mic switch there. Yeah, turn it on.
I think it's on.
Yeah, it is now.
Just need to pull it in. Starting on my right, your left, Sean Murphy, David Gartenstein, Lynn Coram, Ruth Barton, Scott Henry, Bob Woodworth, Business Manager Jim Kane, David Dunn, Superintendent Ron Staley, and Secretary Barb Norikowski.
And Mr. Staley, could you please introduce the members of the high school administrative team?
The BAM's principal, Ingrid Crisco, and the assistant principal, Scott Tabashnik, the BUHS principal, Jim Day, and assistant principal, Steve Perrin, and assistant principal, Chris Pratt. In the Wyndham Regional Career Center Director, Dave Coughlin, and Assistant Director, Sean McDonald.
Thank you. Now, some preliminary matters before we get started this evening. First of all, there are a couple of young people who will be carrying microphones tonight. Matthew Dunn and Sarah Levine, if you two could wave. When we recognize you to speak, please wait for the microphone because this is being recorded for air on BCTV. There are members of the Brattleboro Union High School Swiss Exchange out there with pastries and coffee and chili. So if you haven't had dinner, they're doing it all by donation. They really would appreciate your support. You'll find the meeting rules on page 7 of your larger version of the annual report, if you could refer along to us. When you came in tonight and checked in with your town clerk, you received a blue voter card. Please, when you are looking to speak, rise or hold your voter card up, and then I will recognize you. You stand up when the microphone carrier comes to you. Please identify yourself and your town. The voters shall be seated in 4 reserved sections on the gymnasium floor or in the reserved section of the bleachers. Everyone else shall be seated in the far area on the southern side reserved for people who are non-voters, with the exception of school administrators. You have a right to be here. And in the event of a division of the House or paper ballot vote, the town clerks and any Board of Civil Authorities members from their respective towns will be nabbed as tellers. And there is a sergeant-at-arms in the House from Brattleboro Police, Sergeant Bob Perkins. Wave your hands back there. Not that you'll be needed, we hope. Voting in all manners by voice, by division, or by paper ballot. A division shall be had at the discretion of the moderator, or a request by 6 or more voters, a vote by paper ballot upon demand of 7 or more voters. If you've spoken at least once on the question, we won't call upon you again until everyone else has had the opportunity to speak, and you all have a maximum of 2 times to speak on each question. Debate limited to 5 minutes per person speaking for the first time, with one exception. If you have made a motion, you may need more time than that, Mr. Dunn, to explain your motion, so we will make the exception in that case. Now, unless there's objection from the body, we'll consider these rules readopted. So adopted. We will move on to Article 1, to act on the reports of officers. Is there a motion? Mr. Murphy, please bring the microphone up to you.
Is that on? Yeah, I guess it is. I move that the reports of the district officers be accepted as printed.
Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Moderator.
Moved and seconded that the reports of district officers be accepted as printed. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 1 as presented, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 1. We now will call upon Superintendent Ron Staley for action on Article 2.
I'd like to call for nominations for the position of moderator.
I nominate Tim Arsenault as moderator for the ensuing year.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for the position of moderator?
Myself. I have to nominate myself for moderator.
And you are?
AJ
A.J. Hamel Brattleboro. Okay. So I'd like to, any other nominations? Close nominations. All in favor of Tim Arsenault for the position of moderator signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Any votes for AJ?
All in favor of A.J. Hamel as moderator signify by saying aye. Okay. Opposed? No. Okay. So I indicate that Tim Arsenault is the moderator for the BUHS annual meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for your support, and thank you for standing up, AJ, because after all, democracy without opposition means nothing. The people in Egypt are showing us that now. We move on to Article 3, to elect by ballot a clerk. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Woodworth.
I nominate Barbara Nowakowski as clerk to serve for the ensuing year.
Any further nominations?
Second the motion.
Okay, motion has been seconded. All those in favor of Barbara Nowakowski as clerk of the district, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've elected Barbara Nowakowski as your clerk. We move on to Article 4, to elect a district treasurer. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Woodworth.
I nominate James E. Kane as treasurer to serve for the ensuing year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further nominations? It's been moved and seconded that James E. Kane serve as treasurer for the ensuing year. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. James Kane is your district treasurer. Article 5, to elect one auditor to serve for a period of 3 years. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator,
Mrs. Coram.
I nominate Marshall Wheelock as auditor to serve for a period of 3 years.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further nominations? Seeing none, all those in favor of Marshall Wheelock to serve as auditor for a period of 3 years, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've elected Marshall Wheelock as a district auditor. Article 6, to see if Brattleboro Union High School District Number 6 will authorize its board of directors to retain the services of a certified public accountant or public accountant to aid in the work of the auditors. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Henry.
I move that the board of school directors be authorized to employ a certified public accountant or public accountant to aid in the work of the auditors the ensuing year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, the Board of School Directors be authorized to employ a certified public accountant or public accountant to aid in the work of the auditors for the ensuing year. Discussion on the motion. And seeing none, all those in favor of Article 6 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 6 as presented. Article number 7, to see what salaries Brattleboro Union High School District 6 will vote to pay its officers and directors. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator,
That would be Mrs. Barton.
I move that the Brattleboro Union High School District Number 6 be authorized to issue vouchers for the payment of its officers and directors for the ensuing fiscal year in the following amounts. To its clerk, the sum of $200. To its directors, the sum of $2,000 each, except that the chairman shall be paid an additional $1,000 for a total of $19,200.
Second.
Moved and seconded that Brattleboro Union High School District 6 be authorized to issue vouchers for the payment of its officers and directors for the ensuing fiscal year in the following amounts. To its clerk, the sum of $200. To directors, the sum of $2,000 each, except that the chairman shall be paid an additional $1,000 for a total of $19,200. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article number 7, as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 7 as presented. Article number 8, to see if Brattleboro Union High School District 6, pursuant to 24 VSA subsection 2804, will deposit $800,000 from the audited, unrestricted, unreserved general fund balance into the reserve fund established at the February 9th, 2010 annual meeting for the purpose of operating the school. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Dunn.
I move that the Brattleboro Union High School District Number 6, pursuant to 24 VSA 2804, deposit $800,000 from the audited, unrestricted, unreserved general fund balance into the reserve fund established at the February 9th, 2010 annual meeting for the purpose of operating the school.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that Brattleboro Union High School District 6, pursuant to 24 VSA subsection 2804, deposit $800,000 from the audited, unrestricted, unreserved general fund balance into the reserve fund established at the February 9th, 2010 annual meeting for the purpose of operating the school. Mr. Dunn, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, members of the public should be aware that there was a memo in the back that is the yellow copy that has the details of the request in case there are any questions.
Anything further, Mr. Dunn?
That is it.
Any further discussion on Article number 8? Mr. DeGray.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Being one of the auditors, one of the recommendations that the three auditors, in reviewing last year's audit, was to hire an internal auditor. Meeting with Jim Kane to approve the audit, which we did in Article 1, I would suspect. I'm wondering, and I have mixed feelings on whether we should do this year or make a recommendation to the board to really look at this as the sum of this budget is up around $27 million, and you have two other people, I know one of the other auditor is here, is that this is getting to be a complicated document for reviewing, and speaking with Mr. Kane, that possibly looking at how this function is done as to the complexity of it. I'm sure that the auditor didn't make that recommendation lightly to hire an internal auditor. There are a lot of transactions going on in the district office for district-wide. And so one of the things that I was looking at here would be to look at possibly making a motion to use money from the surplus account to pay for an internal auditor for the next 3 years, and to see how that benefits the district. I'm not ready to make that motion, but would query the chair of the board or Mr. Kane as to their feelings on this.
The board and the administration is queried if they so wish.
The Finance Committee of the board met and reviewed the recommendation you have before you. Nationally, many schools have between 3 to 8% of their operating budgets established as a reserve. By increasing our reserve by this $800,000, our reserve total will be approximately 6% of our operating budget. We feel that it's fiscally prudent to do this in case there's a problem that is going to require that we use these reserve funds. This would be for something like a problem with a roof or a problem with a major structural issue in one of the buildings. So we think that this is a prudent thing to do, and the Finance Committee voted on it, and the full board voted on it, and last year the voters voted to approve the establishment of this fund for just this purpose.
Mr. Kane.
The auditor's recommendation really would have no impact on efficiency as far as processing transactions, payments, etc. Internal control deals with fraud, risk, that things are in compliance with standards. If I was given a choice between adding competent accounting staff versus an internal auditor, from where I sit, I would add staff. This came about after Enron and Sarbanes-Oxley legislation with the feds. The auditing world changed, and auditors, as part of their compliance and to cover themselves, nothing is perfect. So they highlight different things annually. This has been recurring, even though I don't think it's critical. As I said, I would prefer qualified staff versus someone checking around, seeing that a document is approved 6 times before a check goes out of the office. Truthfully, the high school is not big enough to employ an internal auditor full-time. We discussed it at the supervisory union level, and when it was discussed there, we talked internally of maybe sharing one with the town of Brattleboro, because I know it's lacking in the town too. So maybe if it was 2/3 school and 1/3 for the town, that might be doable. Another area with the internal auditor is they would answer more to the board. They would not work for me. They're kind of, Lone Ranger out on their own. And all things being equal, I haven't seen anything from the auditors other than it being in the report and talking to Tim Fogg from P-Check about it, that it's a critical need. They're just saying there is a need. And it all stemmed, as I said, back from Enron and problems with auditors being too close to the client and the companies they were dealing with, and kind of cooking the books on the audited financials. So I would prefer, at this point, not doing that. And if the board or the district voters preferred to spend additional money for accounting to look for qualified staff.
Further discussion on Article 8? Seeing none, again, the motion is that Brattleboro Union High School District 6, pursuant to 24 VSA subsection 2804, deposit $800,000 from the audited, unreserved, unrestricted general fund balance into the reserve fund established at the February 9th, 2010 annual meeting for the purpose of operating the school. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor of Article 8 as read, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 8. We move to Article 9 to see if Brattleboro Union High School District Number 6 will vote to appropriate a sum of money to defray its expenses and liabilities for the ensuing year, and if so, how much? Is there a motion on the floor?
Yes, there is, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Dunn.
I move that the Brattleboro Union High School, District Number 6, appropriate the sum of $27,391,330 in order to defray its expenses and liabilities for the fiscal year 2011-2012. If adopted, the portion of this total sum to be raised by taxes to be only that portion not received from revenues from other sources.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that Brattleboro Union High School District 6 appropriate the sum of $27,391,330 in order to defray its expenses and liabilities for the fiscal year 2011-2012. If adopted, the portion of the total sum to be raised by taxes to be only that portion not received from revenues from other sources. Mr. Dunn, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, please, Mr. Moderator.
Please proceed.
I'd like to first thank all the voters who are here this evening, and I'd like to thank the administrators, teachers, my fellow board members, all of who worked tirelessly to prepare the budget before you. I'd like to take a few minutes to go through the highlights of the budget and review some of the figures in it. This proposed 2011-12 budget can best be described as a status quo document. There are no new programs. There are no cuts to any programs. We have moved some services around to better utilize our resources, and we have made some changes to the way we educate special education students. Those changes will be good for our students and good for the taxpayers. In recognizing our economic climate, we have attempted to minimize the impact to property taxpayers. Moving specifically into the numbers, I'd like to spend the time focusing on the summary report you have in front of you, which is the thin document. We're going to go through that and review some of the substance of the budget. If you would please turn to page 5, I'd like to start with our expenses. The third column from the right shows the proposed 2011-2012 expense budget. A couple of explanations are in order to show you what we did. If you look at the extreme right column, you will see that the percentages change year over year, and some of those percentages are way up while others are way down. These changes reflect our ongoing efforts to consolidate and reduce expenses across our 3 schools. In order to accomplish that, we've moved some services from individual schools into the district-wide budget, hence the large increase that you see there. With the result of the overall budget being a reduction in expenses at all 3 schools. You'll see that the senior high is down almost 34%, BAMS is down 24%, and the Career Center is down 1%. By shifting some of these expenses and consolidating services, the district-wide budget is now up 72%. We did this by moving special education services to the district-wide management, which allows us to move resources to where and when we need them. The administration have also made the decision to reduce the number of special education students that we are educating out of district, and we have modified our intensive needs students programs as well. These changes in aggregate will save us over $433,000 a year, which is the biggest adjustment and impact in this budget. I should also point out that the budget includes contractual increases for teachers, as well as a 3% increase in our health insurance premiums. The budget also incorporates savings from an early teacher retirement incentive that we've offered. We will receive a small financial benefit in this budget and a major savings benefit in next year's budget. In the big picture, the net impact of these changes and adjustments is an increase of only 0.32%, or about $80,000 on a $27 million operating budget. Looking back on those budget figures for a moment, our current operating expenses are just higher than our expenses were in 2007 and 2008. My fellow board members and I hope that the public shares our view that the teachers, administration, and the board have done an excellent job controlling expenses in this tough economic environment. You may remember that we reduced the budget by almost 4% last year, or about $1 million. We are able to hold on to that reduction and still continue all of our programs. I would like to now finish up on our operating expenses by moving down to the special items at the bottom of that page. Those are found at the bottom of page 5. As you can see, our debt service on the construction project has continued to decline. It's dropped by about $52,000, and that downtrend will continue through the remainder of the 20-year bond. You will also see that we're now starting to make payments on the new track at $88,000 a year. This is on a 5-year amortization schedule. The track was completed on time and on budget. It's a great asset for our students and for the community at large. And so in total, finishing up the expense side of the budget, we are proposing an increase of $116,000, or less than 1/2 of a 1% increase. Now, if you turn to pages 6 and 7, you'll take a look at our revenue picture. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner of page 7, you'll see that our revenue projection is up $116,008, or exactly the same amount as the operating expenses are. This is obviously balancing our budget. Where the money comes from to balance this budget is always an interesting exercise, as you can see from the almost 2 pages there of revenue categories. Nevertheless, the major changes in revenue projected in the fiscal year 2011 and 12 budget comes from 3 areas. First, we are proposing to use $800,000 from the unrestricted, unreserved fund balance as revenue to help defray taxes. I should point out that is a separate item from the $800,000 that you just approved. This is an additional $800,000. This is an increase in total of about $163,000 more than our current budget. In other words, we have a budget surplus from last year that we are proposing to use next year. Second, if you look at the bottom of page 7, under the heading Federal Education Jobs Funding, and then look all the way over to the right column, we receive federal aids through the ARRA program, the federal program, in a total amount of $320,000. We're proposing and recommend that we split the use of that money over 2 years, hence the $160,012 you see in the budget. The same amount will be included in the 2012-2013 proposed budget that you will see next year. The third notable item on the revenue side is that we have an increase in local tuition in an amount of $70,000. That number is due to an increase in the number of students in our 3 schools. Also in this revenue budget, you will see a substantial reduction in state special education revenue. That is due to the fact that revenue is generated on a reimbursement basis. And when eligible special education expenses decrease, the corresponding revenue also decreases. And now I'd like to wrap up the proposed budget by moving to the tax implications. If you turn to page 15 of the summary, you'll see the tax impact of this proposed budget. Each town in the district is impacted differently based on the changes in the number of full-time equivalent students that they send and by the common level of appraisal adjustment, which we do not have any control over. As a result of the impact that can be found at the bottom of the page, the property tax impacts on a $200,000 home is projected to be an increase in Brattleboro of $12.32, a decrease of $60.95 in Dummerston, an increase of $42.47 in Guilford, an increase of $56.47 in Putney, and finally, a decrease of $27.66 in Vernon. Those numbers should match the numbers you have there in your summary report. I would again like to thank all the voters who came out here tonight. I know it's cold, I know it's the middle of the winter, and I hope that you will support this budget for our students and for our community. We produce some very talented graduates here who we hope will go on to do great things for the community and for our society. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Further discussion on Article 9. Mr. DeGray.
Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. A question for the high school. As I was looking through the budget and actually through the audit, in the physical education department, the line item for last year was overexpended by $88,000. And also in the principal's office, it was overexpended by $81,000. And it looks like they were staff changes, and they weren't budgeted. Now, I know that you had cut $1 million out of last year's budget, but if you could talk to me about that staffing line increase for physical education, and it looks like the register or secretary and the principal's line item was increased, if you could address that.
The board and/or administration is queried if they wish.
Yeah.
One moment.
Mr. Kane.
The PE under senior high on page 32 of the audit, the large report, that excess was offset by the line under district-wide on page 31, under extracurricular, substitutes, and support services. It was for one of the, not department heads, but it was for the athletic director. That was a coding issue. So the one offsets the other. On the administration fees, the expenses, and the counseling, there was a coding difference between support staff within the principal's office in counseling, and that there's a net savings there to the good, Dick. That was a coding issue too. There was no additional administrators, that was support staff. And as I mentioned, it actually comes out in the black to the good of plus 50,000, the variance between those two departments.
Further discussion under Article 9. Going once, going twice. Are you ready for the question? If so, again, the motion on the floor is that the Brattleboro Union High School District 6 appropriate the sum of $27,391,330 in order to defray its expenses and liabilities for the fiscal year 2011-2012. If adopted, the portion of this total sum to be raised by taxes to be only that portion not received from revenues from other sources. All those in favor of Article 9 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 9. We move on to Article 10 to see if Brattleboro Union High School District 6 will authorize the district to accept and expend categorical grants and aid received from the state of Vermont and the United States government. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator,
Mrs. Barton.
I move that the Brattleboro Union High School District Number 6 authorize its Board of School Directors to accept and expend categorical grants and aid received from the state of Vermont and the United States government.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that Brattleboro Union High School District 6 authorize its Board of School Directors to accept and expend categorical grants and aid received from the state of Vermont and the United States government. Discussion on Article 10. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 10 as read, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 10. We move on to Article 11 to see if Brattleboro Union High School District 6 will vote to authorize its Board of Directors to borrow money pending the receipt of payments from the member districts by the issuance of notes or orders payable not later than 1 year from the date thereof. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Gartenstein.
I move that the Brattleboro Union High School District Number 6 authorize its Board of School Directors to borrow money pending the receipt of payments from the member districts and not in excess of anticipated revenue for the school year by the issuance of its notes or orders payable no later than 1 year from the date thereof.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that Brattleboro Union High School District 6 authorize its Board of School Directors to borrow money pending the receipt of payments from the member districts and not in excess of anticipated revenue for the school year by the issuance of its notes or orders payable no later than 1 year from the date thereof. Discussion on Article 11. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 11 as read, please say aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 11. Article 12, to transact other business that may legally come before the meeting. And I'd like to introduce Superintendent Staley for an item on Article 12.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Although this individual is not here tonight, I'd like to acknowledge Mike Hebert for his 12 years of service from the Vermont School Board Association, presented to Mike in recognition of dedication and exemplary service to the Vermont children as a board member for the Brattleboro Union High School Board. Mike is currently serving as a state representative for Guilford and Vernon, and he's in Montpelier tonight, so I'd like to acknowledge Mike's service. This next certificate acknowledges the appreciation and dedication to the students and families of the Brattleboro Union High School School District Number 6 during his 3 years of service on the Board of School Directors, to David Gartenstein. This next individual is getting 2 certificates. The first is a 12-year service award for Lynn Coram, again from the Vermont School Board Association, for her dedication and exemplary service to the Vermont children as a board member of BUHS number 6. And we are also saddened that Lynn is getting off the board, and we would like to recognize and appreciate her dedication to the students and families to the BUHS School District 6 during her 12 years of service on the BUHS Board of School Directors. Lynn?
Thank you. Please be seated. Again, under Article number 12, other business that may legally come before this meeting. If I see nobody else with a hand raised, I'll call upon Mrs. Cappy, the town clerk from Brattleboro, who has the list of who attended, or more appropriately, who didn't attend tonight. From Brattleboro, 8,443 registered voters, 51 of you showed up. That is 0.6%. From Dummerston, 1,570 on the checklist. A grand total of 8 made it to the meeting tonight. That's half of 1%. Guilford gets the prize, a 1,609-person checklist. 12 of you showed up, that's 0.7%. Putney, 1,642 on the checklist, 5 of you attending, 0.3%. Vernon, 1,463 on the checklist, attendance 7, that's 0.4%. Totals out of 14,727 registered voters, tonight's attendance 83, which is half of 1%. I think you all just spent probably $500,000. Mr. DeGray.
I know we looked at Saturdays. We only tried it 1 year. But one of the things that seems to happen every year on this meeting is that we happen to have a basketball game, usually obviously away. Is there any way that the school, the administration, can look at not having a basketball game scheduled or any other games, whether it be hockey, basketball, so that it might possibly increase attendance at this meeting?
The administration is queried if it so chooses. Mr. Dunn, could you wait for a microphone, please? Excuse me, Mr. Yeah, Mr. Day.
We can look at it, but, you know, we can't play in our gym tonight, so some of our teams go elsewhere. And, you know, we've had some cancellations. It's winter in Vermont. So if directed, certainly we won't have any games anywhere this night.
Thank you. Further discussion under Article 12. Seeing Mr. Hamill, please make sure he gets a microphone.
I'd like to make a motion to allow the students of Brattleboro High School the right to vote on this budget as well. And our parents pay taxes, right? We should have a right. Students should have the right to vote on this budget. I would like to make a motion to allow the students of Brattleboro High School and Brattleboro Area Middle School the opportunity to vote on the Brattleboro High School District 6 budget.
This would be advisory as it was not properly warned. Is there a second on the motion? Unfortunately, Mr. Hamill, your motion dies for lack of a second. Any further business under Article 12? If not, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Those opposed, nay. I declare the BUHS annual meeting adjourned.